Story of the Stone by Tao Xueqing recounts the extravagant life and gradual fall of the upper-class Jia family in Qing Dynasty, with a particular focus on the description of women's life within their boudoir. One of the major techniques that Tao Xueqing applies in Story of the Stone is to use poetry as a means to reveal what kind of person the writer is. Particularly, Daiyu's flower burial poem in chapter 27 represents her ill-fated life as well as her passionate and sensitive personality. Understanding the flower burial poem and how it portrays Daiyu's life allows the readers to see how Tao Xueqing embeds within his narrative a prevalent belief that poetically talented women in imperial China are usually sick and ill-fated. In a feminine condition, women's poetry on illness in late imperial China, Grace Fong states that the experience of illness often functions as a prelude to writing. I will apply her statement into analyzing Daiyu's flower burial poem to prove that although Daiyu does not directly take her illness as the emotional aspiration for writing, this notion, reflected throughout the flower burial poem, explains Daiyu's illness. With the analysis of the flower burial poem, in Story of the Stone, Daiyu is the incarnation of the crimson pearl flower who has come to the world to repay her debt of tears. Her origin implies that Daiyu is a passionate lover. In his talk about Daiyu's poem on burying flower, Paul Rouser points out that in Chinese poetry, the idea of woman seeing the falling flower signals the desire for love on part of unmarried girls. Seeing these signs, the falling of flowers, of spring's disease, and the heartless swallow built his nest, the sign of conjugal yet impermanent happiness, provokes Daiyu's loneliness and her desire to have a lover at her side, while at the same time signaling her awareness that time is passing by. It is clearly inappropriate for unmarried girls at that time to hope for love. However, as a passionate lover, Daiyu overcomes the boundary of social expectation to explicitly express her sorrow in her poem. Moreover, her expression of desire for love through her view of nature anticipates the reason for her illness, as Andrew Schonbaum asserts in Medicines in Story of the Stone, 4 cases, that the source of illness in stone tends to be emotion desire. Daiyu's love sickness is not only limited to her thinking, but also extends to her actions, as she fully lives for love and eventually exhausts herself over it. In her poem In the Reader Party, Daiyu compares her life with the incense clock that burns the head through the night and through the day, and consumes the heart away. In the flower burial poem, Daiyu shows her sympathy with the steadfast blooming yet unnoticed falling of the non-feeling thing, flowers, by shedding many a tear, which on the boughs as bloody drops appear. As Daiyu cries, her tears blend into the flowers. This confuses the readers whether it is her tears or the blossoms. Rouser uses Chinese poetic ideology to approach this image in 2 ways. One approach is that tears weeping down from woman's red-rouged cheeks are like red blood, and thus, like the blossoms. The second approach is more extreme, stating that women in Chinese poetry cry until there are no more tears to shed. As a result, blood is the only liquid left in their body. This extreme image of draining blood to express sympathy shows how Daiyu, even though aware of her deteriorating health condition, is willing to suffer from love sickness and keeps emotionally investing herself in romantic attachments for both feeling and non-feeling things. Furthermore, The poem portrays Daiyu as a sensitive soul as she expresses her grief for the ending of the spring and the falling of the flowers. The maid, grieved by these signs of spring's decease, seeking some means her sorrow to express. While the signs of spring decease might provoke other girls' sympathy, they will probably grieve for the fallen flowers half-heartedly as they laugh at flower burial. Daiyu, on the other hand, is so sympathetic for the fallen flowers that her sadness leads her to actions of burying the flowers as the means to express her sorrow. The way Daiyu treats the fallen flowers illustrates her sensitivity, dedication, and appreciation for the smallest beautiful creature like the leftover petals. In his analysis of the 10th stanza, "And then I wished that I had wings to fly, the flower last fragrant resting place to find." Paul Rouser asserts that burying flowers is only the next best thing to do, as Daiyu wants to have wings to fly to another world and give a more formal funeral for the flowers, but she can't. It is equally important to acknowledge that Daiyu's lovesickness for both feeling and non-feeling things is not the sole root to her illness. In deficiency of yin in the liver, Daiyu's melody and Fubi in Dream of the Red Chamber, Ji-Hoon Yim accentuates that the cause for Daiyu's illness is more generally heart sickness or Xin Bing, an overactive and more complicated form of love sickness. Daiyu's heart sickness is the combination of feelings of losing her youth as time goes by, of being an orphaned outsider in the Jia family, and of having no one to understand her. Daiyu's heart sickness is reflected in the flower burial poem, since Rouser argues that the poem is more than a portrayal of Daiyu's sensitive lament for the fallen flowers. It is also her cry against fate at the beginning of the poem. As Daiyu grieves for the fallen flowers, she ironically fails to recognize that while nature is renewable, as next year peach and plum tree bloom again, her youth is passing year by year, and no one knows which companions will remain with the flowers. At the very end of the poem, Daiyu's emotion reaches its climax as she mournfully cries out, "Can I, that these flowers obsequies attend, divine how soon or late my life will end?" Daiyu's pathetic question about her own future urges her to recognize that she is ironically mourning the fading of flowers, which bloom again each spring, while ignoring her own pitiful and impermanent life. The last stanza reinforces Daiyu's emotional outburst by repeating the elements of others, as "Let others laugh the flower burial to see, another year who will be burying me." Daiyu's lament for herself symbolizes the vicious situation that traps her throughout the novel. Daiyu is aware that no one in the Jia family understands her, so she develops a hypersensitivity that makes others struggle even harder to get to know her. Paul Rouser points out that this vicious cycle happens repeatedly and finally turns Daiyu into a more problematic and introverted girl in others' characters' eyes. With the analysis of the flower burial poem, it can be concluded that Tao Xuejing succeeds in showing the readers Daiyu's innermost thoughts as well as describing her as a passionate lover and a sensitive soul who always overwhelms herself in love. More importantly, he manages to convey the belief that poetically talented women are usually sick and ill-fated, to demonstrate the concept of femininity, and the expectation for this woman to be aware of the dangers that talent pose to being healthily virtuous and able to fulfill their familial and social roles.